Welcome. This is your friend and your host, Karan Detani, and welcome to the Karan Detani Show. And this is Beyond the Intellectual Understanding of the Principles with Craig Suki. So, without any further ado, let's welcome our guest and start the show. Hi, Greg. Welcome.
Hi, Karan. Great to see you again. It's been a little while.
Yeah, long time. So, Greg, this topic, like beyond the understanding of the principles, I often notice so many people, they have been in the community for years and years, but still they can't get the principles. It's like still some thoughts. They haunt them, they hurt them. So what's missing with them? What's the missing link there?
The missing link would be they're caught up in the intellect, trying to actually understand the words. And Sid said over and over again, don't pay attention to the words, look for the feeling. And he also said, just go out and live your life. And there's so many people who spend day after day just studying materials and watching videos and trying to learn this thing. And it's not something to learn, it's something to experience. It's something to see in action in the world. Is it really what Sid was, getting down to is just the simple fact that we can't escape thought. So this whole idea that the point in getting the principles is to somehow get away from thought and have this blissful, happy life all the time. We're still here to have this full human experience. We're still here to get angry and sad and happy and joyful and grieve and, just all of those different emotions that come with it, but not to get caught up in any of those. Just to be present for what's presenting itself in life and realizing that experience that we're having of it is through our thinking. We can become the observer of our thoughts, but we can't be without thought. It's a natural flow. We all have thought flowing through us. That's the principle of thought. It's not about the content. It's that flow of energy through life, that wisdom of the ages that we all have access to. And it's constantly available to us. But we've trained our minds to pay attention to certain thoughts that come up. If I carry a victim mentality, then the thoughts that flow through that carry a victim mentality, I'm going to claim as mine. And I'm going to remain a victim. But when I let go of that victim mentality, suddenly those victim thoughts don't look so appealing. And it doesn't continue that energy. Because what we consistently think about is what comes into our lives. And most of those thoughts are subconscious because we've thought them so many times for so long that's really what the subconscious mind does, is it picks up on habits and patterns and repeats them. So you don't have to think about how to tie your shoes every time you put them on. After you learn how to drive a car, you don't really have to consciously think about all the things you need to do and pay attention to. You just kind of automatically do it. So all we're really trying to do here is create new habits and new patterns of choosing better thoughts. And it is a process to it, but it's an experiential thing. It's not an intellectual thing. And that's where most people are caught up is how do I define what is mind? It doesn't matter. How does it appear in your life? That's what matters. Yeah, that I really feel like that's what Sid was pointing at. And he kept saying, go live your life. That's when you'll see it.
Beautiful. Yeah, exactly. It's something that you experience, not something that you logically understand. And I've had my own insights, my own experiences, but sometimes it's like I'm trying too hard to get the principles and it just doesn't work. The thoughts really just have got that grip on me and they just take control over me. So it's
And
normal to
that's
get caught up in
okay.
your thinking.
Oh, it's absolutely normal. It's it's not a question of if we're going to get caught up in our thinking, it's a question of how we're going to respond to it. Are we going to realize in that moment that this is just my thinking? This is a thought, it's temporary, it'll pass through just like all the rest have in the past. You know, I never stayed depressed forever, I never stayed angry forever, I never stayed happy and joyful forever. It's all fleeting. So when I find myself in one of those places where I've allowed that thought to, you know, I've kind of latched onto it and grabbed it and went, that's mine. You know, when I find myself in those places and it's one of those uncomfortable thoughts, there's no such thing as a bad thought. There's just some that are more comfortable and some that are less comfortable to deal with. But the most important thing I can do is surrender to that discomfort. Just like I surrender to the comfort. When I'm having a joyful moment, I'm not fighting it. I'm not saying I shouldn't be feeling joyful right now. But when I'm feeling sad, I say I shouldn't be feeling sad. And that's what makes it so difficult. And that's actually what keeps that thought around. Because that's claiming it. It's making it real to me. Because it's not real. Thoughts aren't real, but what we manifest with them, what comes out of them is real. Our experience of them is real. But we chose those thoughts. You know, and that's actually, you know, sometimes people get upset with me when I point to the fact that it's like, you created all your own suffering. I create all of mine. And I don't look at that as bad news. I look at that as good news. Because if I wrote the book, I can rewrite it. If I made that choice in the, you know, to grasp onto that thought that really isn't mine, that I don't want, have no use for, I can also make that choice to let it go. And that choice is where our power lies. I mean, have you seen that choice for yourself when you are caught up in those? Have you been able to see that?
Yeah, I have. It's just like realizing that I'm getting caught up in my thinking. And the moment I let go, it just starts fading away.
Yeah, on its own.
It's,
And that's what Sid was talking about with do nothing. He's not talking about literally just sit on your couch and read 3 principles books all day long. he's talking about do nothing about those uncomfortable times. Step back and become that observer and look at that and be like, that's not mine. It's here for now, but it's not mine. You know, the dog barking next door is eventually going to stop barking, right? You don't necessarily have to do anything to make it stop. It might be annoying for now that it's here, but it'll go away.
great. There's a message from Katrina, and she says, I don't see the choice. I see the temporary nature of thought feeling, but I don't see the choice.
And it can be something difficult to see at first. And a big part of that has to do with the ego fighting its own death. It doesn't want you to see the choice. It wants you to see it as something that's out of your control. You know, that's the view on, you know, the medical view on addiction and mental health issues, is that it's not the person's choice, it's out of their control. So they must need medication or outside help to make it change. But it rarely works. You know, there's so many people who walk around believing they're sick. And as long as you believe that, then it's true for you. It's not real, but it's truth in your experience. And the hardest ones to see are those subconscious, like automatic ones. But those are the most important ones to look at. And you won't see it now, Katrina. If you're trying to think about it now and think of like past experiences with it, you won't see the choice necessarily. You need to look at it in that moment when you're caught up in that thought. And you remind yourself to take a pause, take a couple of deep breaths, and be quiet. And I'll actually ask myself, like, what's here for me? What is in this? Because I know there's a message there. I know there's something in it for me, or it wouldn't be showing up. The thoughts, like I was talking about, there's that constant flow, like a river of thoughts, always going through all of us. That's that universal, the principle of thought, the universal law. It's energy, and it's constantly moving and flowing, and we all have access to every thought in every moment. But we have our own conditioning.
I see what you're saying, but for me, that I don't see the control either. And that was the relief for me, that it wasn't up to me to control. And it wasn't up to me to make the choice.
To an extent, it's not up to you to control.
So when you speak about the choice, that's where I get the confusion, because I don't see it that way.
The choice is in the beliefs that we carry, because that's what draws certain thoughts to our consciousness. That's what makes us aware of those thoughts. We didn't choose which thought came up. That's just in the flow. It's whatever thought came through next that has whatever mentality you carry with you. Like I said, if you have like a victim mentality, the next thought that comes passing through that matches that will be claimed because of that. So in that moment, it's not this like choice, but that choice came from, at some point there was this conscious decision to accept victimhood. Because we all have that choice. We've all been victims of something in our lives, multiple times. And there are times when that happens and we don't claim it. We see that, oh, that person doesn't know me, that person doesn't see me, so I know it's not about me. But when we're a child and it's our parent, we take that to heart. When it's somebody that we respect deeply and care for deeply, and we value their opinions, we generally tend to just take those as being true. And maybe somebody's in a low mood and they say something that causes us a feeling of harm. And then we make the choice to say, I deserve that. That's where that choice is. And after we've made that choice enough times and accepted that criticism enough times, even though it's not true and it's not really about us, that's when it forms that subconscious pattern. And there's that like automatic process in place with the subconscious where it just processes. It does what it does. It's just like a computer. You put the program in it and it just runs it over and over again. So the choice comes in again where when you're in that moment, when that thought has come on, to look at what part of you drew that to you. What part of you was actually asking for that thought to show up? Maybe not that one in particular, but that type of thought, the one that says I'm not worthy, or the one that says I'm not good enough, or whatever. There is this deeper part of us that's kind of hidden in that subconscious part that is drawing that in. And in that moment, when we take an honest look at it, is when we can start making the choice to let it go. That's where the real power of the choice is now, is to say that no longer serves me. That's not mine. And if you do that enough times, you create a new subconscious thought pattern that says those types of thoughts aren't mine. And over time, they stop showing up.
Thank you, Greg. That makes sense. And that's how I see things. but I think I was caught up in the words. I was caught up in the words. Thank you.
And it's easy to do. I mean, we live in a world of words, and the thing is, words are just symbols that we created to try to explain things that really can't be explained by words. it's just the nature of language, especially most modern language. It's just not, you know, English is one of the worst. It just really doesn't capture the essence. And everybody has a different idea of what words mean based on their own experiences and their own education. So we don't even know, you know, we're using a word and we assume that everybody else thinks the same definition of it, but we all have our own definition of each word. So the message is accepted differently. We each live in our own individual reality created by our thoughts and beliefs. If you know, if we all understood that at a deeper level, we would stop all this fighting and arguing about stuff and just accept each other as being different. We don't all need to fit in some neat little box to make this thing we call society. We could just all be ourselves and be creative and, you know, follow our passions and do the things we love doing, even if they don't necessarily make us the money. If we're not living our true authentic selves, we're more likely to latch on to thoughts of being inadequate, because guess what? We're being inadequate in our purpose here in this life. We're not living our true potential. We're not stepping up to the plate and owning our power. It's not up to governments. The government will never change this stuff. It will never make the world a better place to live. People just need to start living that way. That's all it is. And it's scary because we're caught up in this system that says we have to go to work and you have to be a productive person. You know, there's all these expectations on us. But which of those do you really want to claim? They're all just thoughts. They're all those symbols being put together to try to express something and get everybody to act the same and you know, be a good little contributor. But the best contribution we can make is to live in love and to live in that creativity and the lack of fear of just, you know, going out and stepping forward into the world and being our true selves. It's just time to let it go. Not easy, but it's simple. It just takes being aware in that moment, being aware enough to say, this is not the experience that I want in my life. And let it go. Don't fight it. Fighting keeps it there. You know, if you and I are literally fighting, it takes both of us to continue that fight. If I walk away from it, the fight ends. Just let the thought go back into the stream. It's going to be more difficult at first, but with practice and just with that conscious awareness of how this works, which is really what the principles are about. It's, you know, they're not, like I said, it's not about living this like perfectly joyful, happy life. It's about experiencing everything that life has to offer and being joyful and happy about it.
Beautiful. So I can understand that it is something that you experience. You don't need to play the game of thoughts. You don't have to react to them. You have got your free will. It's your choice. But the reason we think, the reason we worry about things is because we want solutions to our problems. So what if somebody has got bills to pay and they have to think about the solutions? And the more they think about it, the worse they feel. So what can help us find solutions? What can help us make our life better?
The only thing that will change that is stepping into our true calling in this life, whatever that may be. You know, for now, it may mean working a job just to be able to pay those bills, but then evenings and weekends, dedicate it to starting your own business, doing your own thing, whatever that looks like. You know, if you really want to be a yoga teacher, then make it happen. If you know, I'm starting my own woodworking business because that's something I'm passionate about. I really enjoy doing, and it is something I can also make money at. Money is energy too. And just like those other thoughts that we draw to us, we can draw money to us too, but we have to actually believe in that process. We have to trust how the universe operates and the fact that abundance is there and it's ours to claim. It's all part of the energy flow. And when we become more open to that, just more aware of how that flow happens, and don't spend so much time getting like caught up in certain parts of it, like focusing on just the money, especially if you have a lack mentality where you're thinking there's not enough and it's hard to get. If that's what you're focusing on, that's what you're going to keep creating in your life. You'll keep drawing more lack. You'll keep drawing that, you know, that absence of abundance. But the abundance is sitting all around us. It's just waiting for us to let it in. That's the key, is we choose what comes in. And retraining the subconscious patterns from I can't get enough money, it's so hard to find a decent job, to universe is providing for me. Universe is the ultimate employer. You know, that's mind, that's that source energy that we're all a part of, we all come from, and we all return to. And we're here for this experience for a reason. And it's different for each of us. That's the thing. We each have a unique purpose in this. We're each a little piece of a puzzle that all fits together and makes this beautiful picture. But we spend too much time arguing over where we should be or shouldn't be in that puzzle, instead of accepting our place in that puzzle and embracing it. That's where that discontent comes from, is believing we should be somewhere that we're not, instead of just creating what we want. You know, and I've had plenty of times in my life without any money. I've been homeless. Fortunately, it was only for a short time, but you know, I have experienced that. And I was very much caught up in that lack mentality back then, where I didn't believe that I would get money, that I didn't believe I deserved it. And now I've taken a giant leap and actually, you know, quit my job that, you know, I was making the most money there that I've ever made in my entire life. And I just walked away from it to pursue my own thing and just trust in that process. And I might have to eat rice and beans for a while to make that happen, but it will happen. I trust that that is coming, that it's here, that all I have to do is take that step forward and the universe will reward me.
Beautiful. So it's just like our focus. We can choose to focus on lack or on abundance. Beautiful.
Right.
Correct.
It's
Okay,
just
so
like
Mika
anything
has
else.
Mika has raised her hand. Hi, Mika.
Hey, Karan, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, just a couple of things, came to mind through the conversation so far. First of all, I want to say that part of what attracted me to this, I've kind of not been listening to as much are tuning in to as many conversations recently around, the 3P things, or anything for that matter, not just 3P things, but only for this reason of just like more thinking about it, more like as opposed to just feeling it or being in it. Like there was just a thing where I'm like, I'm going to step back from analyzing it and picking it apart, and to just, because for me, so much of it is about the feeling. And that's what I really tune into, is that once we have the understanding of how thought and mind and consciousness work together, in our experience, then that beautiful way in which we are informed through what we feel. We can feel, is our thought process does it feel expansive? Does it feel relaxing? Does it feel buoyant, or does it feel constricting? Does it feel tight? Does it feel tense? And just knowing that, thoughts flow through like a leaf on the river. We don't have control over those thoughts that flow through, but what we can do is choose to either snowball it into a, thought storm, or just let it float by. Is it something that we want to build on, or is it something that we just want to let it pass by? But we don't have to take ownership of it. We don't, I think of the Eckhart Tolle, quote about, worry pretends to be important and serves no purpose at all. So many times a thought can make us want to, oh, this is important, I've got to sort this out. And yet we don't have to. And then the other thing that came to me is just how much I love tuning into nature, and I learn, from the wisdom of nature, that whether it's watching the birds or wildlife or the plants or the trees that just be, that are in the process of just being. And sometimes we're so busy trying to get somewhere, or get rid of something, or do something, that we're losing the beauty of just being in the process of life. Just living. That's why, to me, it's like, I'm here to live, and that's experiencing everything. That's being in the process and seeing the beauty in the process, whether it's messy or easy. There's beauty in all of it. So anyway, those are just some thoughts I thought I'd share.
Oh,
Thanks.
thank you, Nika. That's perfect. That's exactly what this is about, is being in that present moment and experiencing what's here. It doesn't matter what it is. Am I feeling tense? Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling happy and relaxed? Whatever it is, just noticing what it is and not putting a story to it. Just being present. It's not, oh, I'm feeling anxious
think,
because.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm just feeling anxious.
Yeah, it's like if I'm watching the deer or I'm watching the birds, like, are they thinking about, like, I'm sure they're not all tripped up in their thoughts about,
No.
am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Should I have done that? Should have I tweeted that tweet?
Right.
Chirp that chirp. No, they're just out there like being fully alive in that moment.
Yeah, they're not worried about where the markings are on their fur. They just accept how they are and just live. And that's what humans have lost touch with. We are animals too. And we should be in nature, and we've separated ourselves from nature. And Eastern medicine actually has a diagnosis of magnetic field deficiency syndrome. And it's caused by not coming into contact with the earth, because we're always wearing shoes and walking on concrete and living in buildings, and we're just not connected. Take your shoes off. Go walk in the grass. Go find a secluded spot where you can go get naked in a creek somewhere, or just lay in the grass, or just be totally vulnerable and present the way that you were made. Nature is such a huge thing for me, Mika. That's it's yeah, it's huge. Just being present with what is, it changes everything.
Wonderful. You also talked about being your true, authentic self. So, what is our true, authentic self, and how do you live with that?
You have to, like Mika was talking about, you have to become present with what you're feeling. Because if you're doing something like, whatever you do for work, if that brings you tension or anxiety, it's your body telling you that's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be going in a different direction. And we all feel some kind of calling to do something. And it's not, when I talk about like a calling, I'm not talking about like, I'm going to save the world, I'm going to change it. No, it's like one of my callings is woodworking. I'm not going to necessarily change the world with my woodworking. You know what I mean? But in a way I do, because when I'm doing something that I'm passionate about, that energy goes into every piece that I make. And the people who end up being the recipients of those pieces have that energy with it. So I'm spreading my energy around. I'm spreading my love around, my passion for what I'm doing. It's like going out to a restaurant. And if you go to, a smaller place where, maybe the chef is really just passionate about what they're doing, and they love cooking, you can taste that in the food. It's a different experience of that food. You could have the same dish made at, a different, like a chain restaurant that may be using the same quality ingredients, but the person in the back is just doing it for a job. It's not something they love doing. It's just to pay the bills. And that food will taste bland in comparison. So that's how we change the world, is by doing our little things. And if we're all doing that, then that energy just keeps getting spread around and transferred. It's like that idea of the local economy and using cash to keep the money going and keep it where it is. It's the same type of concept. You need to keep it whole and not let other people take a piece of it, and just be you, whatever it is you're feeling called to do. If you want to dance, go dance. If you want to be an artist, be an artist. Whatever it is. If you want to, if you're somebody who really enjoys crunching numbers and doing data entry and stuff like that, then do that. Like, that's what you should be doing, because everything is needed. And if it's done out of passion, it just adds that extra flavor to it, that extra kind of deliciousness to life. And if you're not sure what you want to do, go try stuff. Seriously, go find groups around you that, it's something you that sounds interesting, and go check it out. You may find it's not for you, and then you go try something else. And then eventually you find something and you're like, yeah, I really like this. This feels good. Because a lot of people don't get that opportunity growing up to really explore what they want to do. There's, family expectations about what you should do. Might be expected to become a doctor, and that's really not what you want to do. But that's what your dad did and your grandpa did. And that's that family lineage, and you're not supposed to break that. So a lot of people never actually try enough different things to figure out what does call to them.
Beautiful. So it's more about doing what you love, following your passion, right? Great, great,
Yeah. How does it make you feel?
great.
Like, that's the key. Are you happy in what you're doing? Are you fulfilled? I'm not talking about financially, that'll come. You do what you love and money shows up. Those 2%ers know that secret. That's why they have all the money. But it's not that it's not limited. That's the thing. People like to look at that as if, oh, they've already got all the money. And it's like, no, it's an infinite source. And it'll change forms. Certain currencies come and go. The values rise and fall, but abundance is always there.
I would also add to that, when we come to the end of our time in this physical form, how much money we had in our bank account is probably not going to be the first thing on our mind. It's not going to be the most prevalent thing, but how did we live? How did we honor our life? How did we love? How did we give service to our path, to our, world, to ourselves, to those that were close to us? I recently I'm doing a workshop thing, and we had to write our own eulogy, and it's just in that pondering of really paring it down to what really mattered. Of course we need money and we want to live money, but is that the thing that we want running through our head all the time? Is that number, that thing that we think is that pot of gold at the end of that rainbow in our heads? It's
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I don't want to be remembered for how many commas and zeros I had in my account. If that's all I'm remembered for, then I failed. I want people to remember, my kindness and my love and my willingness to be present for other people and myself. That's the hardest thing, is to do it for ourselves. It's so much easier to run out in the world and, help everybody else. But what am I doing for me? That's not selfish. I need to charge myself so that I can be of better service to others too. If I'm coming from a higher frequency, a higher energetic level, then how much larger of an impact can I have on other people's lives? How much more can I help others, and how much more compassion will I feel for somebody who maybe others just don't even want to try to understand? There's a thing in this kind of process of awakening, or whatever you want to call it. We're just becoming conscious of like who we are and what we truly are. There's a period of dissonance in the middle, because we'll have an insight, we'll have an awakening, and we'll have this deeper understanding, this deeper feeling. And it takes a little while for the outside world to catch up to that sometimes. Just because you've had a difference in your thinking doesn't mean that necessarily overnight you're going to have all that money show up in your bank account. It's coming. It's on its way. It's been waiting for you. But sometimes we're in that dissonant state where we had the experience, but we don't have the full belief yet. We're still processing it. We're still integrating it. We're still figuring out what it means for us. And in that in-between point, it's going to be extremely uncomfortable. And there's a temptation to want to go back to sleep. But we can't. Not really. We can do it for short periods. We can, I can still get caught up in my thinking and get upset at things and get a little depressed sometimes. Like, it still happens. But I'm much more resilient with it. It doesn't last as long. I see it faster and let it go more quickly and move on to the next thing, whatever it may be. And sometimes the next thing is another depressing thought. That's okay too. Like, it's fine. It doesn't mean anything. Just let that one go too. Just being present with this experience of life is all that really matters. The rest of it will take care of itself when we follow that passion. Because people see that. I mean, how many times have you seen somebody, you're like, that person's really into what they're doing, and you feel called to contribute. I'm going to buy their product. I'm going to hire them for their service. Or, if they're, a street musician and you're throwing money into their case or something because they're playing music so beautifully with such passion. And you're like, that needs to be rewarded. You see it. That's the way this is supposed to be operating. But the world generally runs on the scarcity mindset. Oh, that musician should just go get a job. Should they? Or should they be paid for doing what they do so beautifully?
Beautiful. Craig, I know about wisdom, the divine mind, or the deeper intelligence that's always guiding us. But sometimes, no matter how much I try to get present, I don't get my answers. I don't get new thoughts. So why is it that sometimes the wisdom doesn't show up?
It's not that the wisdom doesn't show up, it's that we're not listening. It's a process, it's a practice. It's a practice of being aware of what's going on in each moment and not allowing ourselves to get caught up in it. But, while we're learning that, we're still going to have times when we get caught up in it. I mean, Jesus still flipped tables. You know what I mean? Like, we're nobody's immune to it. It's going to happen from time to time. The key is letting it go, not claiming that as me or mine, and not looking at it as something wrong with it, not creating the story about it. This happened because I'm this. No, it just happened. And you just happened to be there. And all of these experiences are temporary. I mean, which one have you been through that's been permanent? it just doesn't happen that way. It might feel like that in the moment, especially those really dark places that we can get into. Sometimes it feels like they're going to last forever. And it's funny to me how much people are concerned about what happens after we die. But nobody has that same concern for where we came from before we were born. Isn't that funny? It's probably the same place, I would think, right? I mean, if we come from somewhere, we probably go back to that place. Like, but so many people are concerned about the end of it. And I'm not anymore, because I know that I'm living my purpose now, and I'm building the life that I want to live. And I'm not 100% there. I don't know that I ever will get 100% there. That's not the point. The point is I'm enjoying this experience now. And ever since I stepped into that, just being present with it and enjoying whatever shows up, more beautiful things are showing up. because there isn't resistance. There's just that openness. Just bring it on, bring it, whatever it is.
Okay, so someone says, continuously changing thoughts gets me tired.
Well, yeah, because you don't need to change the thought, you need to let it go. We can't change the thought. It is what it is. It already exists without us or with us, whichever. It still exists. We may not be aware of it if we're not thinking that thought at the time, but it's still there in that flow, because every possibility, every thought exists in every moment. And if we let go of the current one that's there that we don't like, another one will come in. We don't have to change the thought, it changes itself. And like I said earlier, sometimes that depressive thought we let go of is replaced by another depressive thought. And then we let go of that. And maybe there's 10 more depressive thoughts behind it. Just understanding that sometimes that's the order of things. That's how it happens. It takes the pressure off. It gives this relief of like, oh, okay, it's nothing I'm doing wrong. Yeah, I mean, it could be the observer. He could just send a comment. It is. It's about becoming the observer. And that's the whole point in like prayer and meditation and yoga and like all these different techniques that people use. It's not the technique that's getting you somewhere. The technique is distracting you from your thinking long enough to experience yourself. And so many people get caught up in it and go, oh, it's the yoga that's doing this. No, it's the quiet mind while you're practicing yoga that's doing that. And understanding that will allow people to choose if they want to practice those things, but be able to stay in that space regardless of whether or not they're practicing it. Because once you've experienced yourself, you know yourself. It's just that too many people are getting caught up in the techniques and believing it's the technique that's doing that for them. We don't need to get anywhere. We don't need to become something that we're not. We're already there. We just believe that we're not. And when we drop those beliefs that we're not there, then we realize we've always been there. And there is no technique necessary. In the meantime, those techniques can be very useful. Learning to quiet your mind is vital. Learning to be present with what that feeling is, like Mika was talking about, just knowing your deepest inner parts at a really intimate level and accepting them just as they are. That's the real key. Become that observer. Look inside. Is this mine? And it's funny to do that when you're happy too, because we all want to do it when we're not feeling good. But when we're feeling great, we don't stop to think about that. This is me. This is who I am when I'm not caught up in my thinking about myself. And we've all experienced that at times, you know, when you walk outside and there's this gorgeous sunset with the perfect clouds and so much color. We just stop and we're in awe. And for that moment, our thinking drops away and we're just present. Just like that noisy motorcycle, let the thoughts go by. You don't have to claim them. I don't have to go run out there and yell at that guy for having a loud motorcycle driving by, right? It's not going to change anything. He's still going to have a loud motorcycle and he's still going to drive by. But now I'm frustrated about the situation instead of going, oh, cool, it'll pass. It'll be quiet in just a couple seconds.
Beautiful. I want to ask you a last question, then I will go for audience Q&A. And the question is, what is peace of mind and how do you experience it?
Good question. Peace of mind is that state of being the observer. You know, to be present with what's here and to find the joy in it. And I know that sounds like the most ridiculous thing when you're caught up in depression, to look for the joy in depression, but it's there because it's an experience we're meant to have in that moment because of choices we made. They led us there. And there's a lesson to learn from it if we get quiet and ask ourselves. That's where that peace of mind comes from, is trusting the process and trusting ourselves and trusting that it's all working out for the greater good. And as I learn to make better choices about what I believe and what I want to draw into my life, then I'll have a better experience overall. But in the meantime, looking for that piece of joy in depression is really a pretty fascinating thing. You know, it's an interesting experiment. It's like, you know, it's kind of like I said earlier, nobody's worried about where we came from before we were born. But why not think about that too? Because obviously we didn't come from a traumatic place. You know, we're not born full of trauma. We're born full of love. We can all look in the eyes of a baby and just see that like pure innocence. So whatever it is on the other side of this experience obviously can't be traumatic. So why worry about it? Why worry about this experience? It's also not traumatic unless we decide to make it so.
Beautiful. So I'll open audience Q&A. If anybody has any question, please raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask a question. All right, I see nobody has any questions. Cool, interesting. So I have a question. That is, happiness, is it temporary or is it permanent? And how do you live a happy life?
There's kind of two parts to that. There's the happiness that most people think about is related to things and stuff and experiences and happenings. But that's not true happiness. That is the fleeting happiness. That is the one that comes and goes. But there's a deeper happiness in fully surrendering to this experience, this human experience, where we can actually remain in a good place even when we're feeling down. And I've had some really beautiful experiences with depression these last few years. Just feeling that depth of just feeling, of just being alive. Because it means you're still here. And it means you've still got a chance to have a better day later today, tomorrow, 2 weeks from now, whatever. I might have 100 depressive thoughts lined up in order and have to keep dismissing those. But until I learn to actually, you know, like we've been talking about, become that observer, and look at those feelings with this loving detachment of that's not me, because I'm the one feeling those things, which means they are not me. There is a distinct separation there. I'm feeling it, but it is not me. It is not who I am at my core. Because who I am is love. Who I am is, this beautiful being here to have all the 1,000 different, variations of feelings that I'm going to have. And I can't stop that part of it. Things are going to come and go. Experiences come and go. You lose loved ones, and you feel grief and sorrow and anger and all kinds of things. But then you don't. You feel them, and then they change into something else. How many times have you been at a funeral and end up seeing people laughing because somebody just had a memory pop up of a really great time with that person who just died? And then other people start sharing their great experiences with that person. And then the whole mood changes. There's still this sadness present, but there's that happiness within the sadness. There's that joy within the depression. There's always the light in the dark. It's always there somewhere. And when we learn to find that, that's what creates a happy life. It's not about always being happy. It's about having a happy life. It's about being happy with what's present, even if what's present isn't necessarily what we would call happiness. Death is actually the only thing that makes life worth living. The fact that this is going to end at some point, that's what gives us some kind of purpose here. If we knew we were going to live forever, what would we bother trying for?
Yeah, I love that, because that's what makes it precious.
Yeah, it really
that
is.
It's limited, that we, in this experience. And, one thing I wanted to add that was coming to mind is this idea of chasing happy, to me, contentment, being content, which is really being at peace, being content with the ever-flowing changes and all the feelings, whether it's happy or sad or, all the others, that just having contentment inside ourselves.
Mm.
There's so much value in finding the beauty of that. And yeah, that's it.
Sure. Yeah, taking the middle path. And it came to me a number of years ago, this idea of the pendulum. I don't know if any of you have ever seen, I went to a museum somewhere and they had a very large pendulum that was always swinging because of the natural sway of the earth. It always had some kind of sway to it, back and forth, back and forth. So if you think about that natural rhythm as being that center, that place of contentment, and then when you're trying to chase happiness, you're intentionally trying to push that pendulum in a certain direction. And anytime you do that and put that energy into it, it has to swing back the other way, an equal amount. So we're starting this momentum, and we've been doing it our entire lives, and we have our pendulum swinging like crazy. And that's why we experience such large swings, and we have diagnoses of bipolar and all these different mental illnesses that they call it, that appear to be this illness, but it's really just people need to stop chasing and learn to find that place of contentment, which involves some swaying. We will have some experiences of sadness and happiness and joy and, you know, all the different things naturally. We don't have to chase them. It's the chasing that actually makes things most uncomfortable, because that's trying to escape where we are, and where we are is always perfect.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Mika.
It's great. Greg, I want to say thank you to you. I remember when I started, it was you who inspired me. And today I've been very far ahead in my own success in this community. Today we got 2,000 members in our group, and I've done more than 50 interviews, and the big credit goes to Greg. Thank you very much.
Nah, the credit goes to you. You did it. All I did was point you toward yourself. I can't take credit for anything you've done. That's you. That's you, brother. Claim your power. Stand in that power. You've done this. You're following your passion. You're following that purpose. You know, like we were talking about earlier. How do you know? Well, is it happening? Is it making you happy? Is it feel fulfilling? And you're doing it. Proud of you, brother. And I appreciate you inviting me on. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Greg. All right, Greg, it's been a wonderful time with you. I want to thank you all very much for joining us for this beautiful webinar, and looking forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.